Exciting concert for us. It's our first concert with our new music director and conductor, Mr. Murray Kidd. It's been quite an experience this season. We've had a lot of hard work and a lot of getting to know each other, but we are sure you're going to enjoy the product. And you can enjoy Jubilate Chorale thoroughly. We encourage you to come out and join us and be a singer. There are many ways you can support the chorale, so please look at your program books for contact information. So for now, Jubilate Chorale, presenting a ceremony of carols. We are ready for you under the direction of Mr. Murray Kidd.
Welcome to the Christmas 2019 concert by Jubilate Chorale. And about this time last year, when we did this program, we were saying goodbye to the longtime director, Maxine Asselin. My tongue just got hung up in there. And today we're going to welcome the new artistic director, Murray Kidd. Murray, welcome to Jubilate.
Thank you very much. Yes, thanks, Paul. Really appreciate it. We're having a good time there.
Yeah. Just to give people a little bit of background, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I've been a conductor for about 15 years, after spending about 15 years as a soloist in the Boston area, singing for organizations like the Handel and Haydn Society of Boston, Boston Baroque, lots of other community choruses and some national tours here and there. And then I transitioned to being a conductor and started conducting community choirs and college choirs. And recently got the job with Jubilate, and I'm really excited to be here.
I'm glad finally somebody has finally said Jubilate, not just me.
Yeah.
You know something, when they hear this, you and I are going to be attacked for this.
That's right, yes.
There is one thing I wanted to mention. You did start a youth choir up a few years ago called World Voices.
Yes.
And we had a program for that concert that was seen in Brockton and Whitman. So there are some people out there who will have seen that and have an idea as to who you are now.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, World Voices is a real passion of mine. We're going strong, and we're starting a year-round program so that it's not just during the February vacation break, but it's once a week, and the kids come and meet, and they learn graphic arts, they learn leadership, and of course they learn choral studies. And we're preparing a concert now that's going to be on Martin Luther King Day in January, and they're working really hard on the music and having a good time.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, now to get to the Jubilate concert, the first piece in the program is on Justice, Truth, and Peace by Amy Vernon. What would you like to tell us about that?
This is a really effective piece. I loved, the first time I saw this on the page, it really spoke to me. It starts with one voice, it's a cappella. The sopranos come in on a theme, and then it's repeated or not really repeated by the altos, but the altos come in a sympathetic way on top of that, followed by the tenors and basses. And then it starts to slowly build. And the text is from the Torah, basically where justice is done, truth is made, and peace is created. The text is very near and dear to me. It's just a wonderful text and sentiment. And I thought it would be a nice way to start the program with the mixture of the beautiful text as well as the way the choral setting begins softly and starts to build and just has a real nice feel to it.
It's one of those kind of themes that has been associated with the Christmas holidays for centuries.
Yes. Yeah, the Hinei Matov is also part of it, and that is basically where people are gathered in a charitable way. Peace is had, and it's just a very nice piece. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
And now, on Justice, Truth, and Peace by Amy Brennan. Next on the program is a traditional French carol called Patapan, and it has some very onomatopoetic words in there.
Yes, that's right. Yes, so the Patapan is depicting the drum. The song is about Willie, take your little drum with your flute, Robin, come. So there, the touraloo that happens in the tune is, of course, mimicking the flute, and the Patapan is supposed to be the drum. It's a Burgundian tune from a long, long time ago, and it's really just a beautiful setting. We're actually going to be doing a piano four hands version for the accompaniment. Sylvia Berry, who was playing the organ for the Benjamin Britten Jubilate, she'll be joining Jim Hay on the piano for this. So it's really going to be a lot of fun to hear this a little bit thicker texture underneath the choir singing this very fun carol.
Well, let's hope they don't get their hands mixed up in there.
That's right.
And now, Pas de Pan, which is a traditional French carol. Next up is a piece called Jubilate Deo, written by Benjamin Britten. Now, people will be remembering Benjamin Britten kind of because of his Children's Guide to the Orchestra, which is one of those things that many, many orchestras around the country do when they know they're going to have an audience of children. So what would you like to tell us about this particular piece?
This is a wonderful piece. It's kind of a neoclassical piece, so it has traits of the classical period, but in a modern tonal sense. So you'll hear lots of imitation. It's basically in two groups. The sopranos and tenors are singing the same phrase, but one of the groups is a little bit more embellished than the other. And then the altos and basses are somewhat together. It's accompanied by organ. Sylvia Berry is one of the treasures of this area. She is going to be playing organ for us on the wonderful organ there at Christ Church, and we're thrilled to be having this sound coming out. I wanted to program a Jubilate because of our namesake. Yeah. And there's so many wonderful compositions to this text, it just seemed normal, and at least it seemed to make sense. And when I saw that Britten had written this in his catalog, I knew we had to do it. And the group sounds amazing doing it. The last rehearsal we had was really inspiring, and I was really thrilled with the progress that they've made, because it's not a very easy piece, but it's a beautiful piece to hear. It's very effective, and it just sounds wonderful.
One little interesting thing we might say about the Jubilate Deo as a piece of text is the church I grew up in used that as a canticle during the prayers on weeks when we were not doing Holy Communion. So it's something, it's a piece of text I know fairly well, although do something completely different because it was done more like a chant.
Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah, and it's a very ancient text, and it has a lot of settings. I mean, hundreds, if not thousands of settings. I'm not too familiar with too many chant settings, but that wasn't the tradition that I grew up in. We didn't chant very much at all. I learned chant when I came to Boston for the first time. Started singing at Church of the Advent in Boston, and there was a ton of chant that we did. It was absolutely gorgeous. But a lot of the settings that I'm used to are the bigger choral settings, like we're doing for Jubilate.
Mm-hmm. And now, Jubilate Deo by Benjamin Britten.
Good afternoon. It's very nice to see you all here. We're going to do a little transition before our next piece. The next piece is with organ, and I thought that our group would fit just perfectly into that space, and it's going to be a lovely picture once they get there. Looking forward to that. And so this piece is by Benjamin Britten, as our second half is also featuring him as a composer. This is a neoclassical piece. You're going to hear a lot of imitation happening with this, especially from the left side of the group and then the right side of the group. So the sopranos and tenors are on the left and the altos and basses are on the right. You're going to hear a lot of interplay going back and forth between the two halves. And it's just a beautiful piece, and I thought it would be nice to put them amongst the pipes rather than having the distance. And I do want to say thank you very much for being here. It is my pleasure to be here. As you know, this is my first concert with Jubilate, and I'm thrilled to be a part of this excellent organization. And I thank you again for being here today.
The next piece in the program is a song by Felix Mendelssohn, "There Shall a Star from Jacob Come Forth." Now, Mendelssohn has done a great many settings from Bible texts or when he was doing things. What would you like to tell us about this particular piece?
Well, this is from his unfinished oratorio, Christus. Christus, as far as I know, has about, when I did the excerpts, it really has about 5 movements that are complete, but they're exquisite. This is a group of 3 short pieces. There's a recitative at the beginning by a soprano. Then there's a trio done by the tenors, baritones, and basses of the choir, which is absolutely beautiful and lush, and the gentlemen sound amazing on this. And then it's followed by a fugue setting of the text, "Then shall a star from Jacob come forth," which builds and builds. Is very classical in nature and just has a lot of real interest to the music itself. And Mendelssohn is kind of a little bit on the romantic side. I mean, he's late classical, early romantic, but he still has a lot of amazing moments in his music, and this is very characteristic of him.
And now, "There Shall a Star from Jacob Come Forth" by Felix Mendelssohn.
Now it's your turn. You ready? Maestro.
Our next selection is For Us a Child is Born. It's a German text by somebody called Kunau, and I've never heard of this person before. What can you tell us about him and the song?
Yes, Kunau was the predecessor of Johann Sebastian Bach at the Thomaskirche in Leipzig. The piece was actually attributed to Bach before recent scholarship and revelations came about. And one of the reasons is because this piece was found in his writing. But back then, a lot of composers would transcribe works of other composers in order to learn their harmonic techniques and their rhythmic techniques. So in the library of the Thomaskirche, someone discovered this and said, well, this must be Bach's writing. I mean, it must be Bach's piece. But it was actually, if you listen to it, there are some traits that aren't quite that of Bach, and some harmonic parts that happen that are just a little bit uncharacteristic of him. It's a beautiful piece. For Us a Child is Born. We're going to be performing it in German, and the choir's having a good time with that. And it's just a little bit of text, and it's a cappella again, and we're just having a nice time putting the counterpoint together, which is always a fun puzzle.
And now, the Jubilate Chamber Choir with For Us a Child is Born by Kunal. The piece by the chamber choir is a piece called Jesus Christ the Apple Tree by Elizabeth Poston. And Murray, what do you want to tell us about this little gem?
This is an amazing piece, composed by Elizabeth Poston, as you said. She was a 20th century female composer. She knew Vaughan Williams and Gustav Holst, and she was encouraged by them to compose more and to get her name out. And unfortunately, she didn't. She had other plans for her life, but she did do a little bit of composing. But she was very heavily involved in the BBC in creating. In hosting one of their series there on classical music. And she was also a little bit of a hero. She was kind of involved in sending coded messages through the airwaves with classical music during World War II. It's a really fascinating story. This particular piece is beautiful. It's such a beautiful tune. It's strophic, which means it has different verses of the same music, but different text. So we start with a unison line at the beginning, and then it starts to gradually build, and it's absolutely stunning. And I'm so looking forward to performing it.
And now, Jesus Christ the Apple Tree by Elizabeth Poston.
With fruit
The next selection by the chamber choir is a piece called Ubi Caritas, and that's a Latin phrase. Could you kind of fill us in on the whole phrase there?
Yes, Ubi Caritas is where charity and love is, there also is God, or the Spirit of God. It's a wonderful setting by Maurice Duruflé. This is it's often set, and there are many compositions to this, but this is probably one of the most famous. It is heavy on the low side, so it has divisi, or divided parts in the tenors and the basses. So you have 4 parts there and 2 parts on top for the sopranos and altos. The sopranos and the altos are passing around the chant of Ubi Caritas, which is a very famous chant, and the tenors and basses are harmonizing underneath. It's very lush, has a few dissonances here and there that are absolutely beautiful, and it's perfectly suited for the chamber choir.
A little dissonance can really make a big difference in something. When you actually resolve it, it really comes together and seems much firmer than it might have otherwise.
Yes, very much so.
And now, Ubi Caritas by Maurice Duruflé. Now we're back to the full chorale singing a song called Evergreen by Daniel Pinkham. And I don't think this is the same Evergreen that people who know pop music will be thinking of.
No, it's not quite that same text or the piece. Daniel Pinkham is one of America's foremost choral composers. He was someone that grew up in Boston, and he is a mentor of mine, and I'm thrilled to be performing this piece and carrying on his legacy. It's a beautiful piece. It's in unison, actually. A lot of choirs stay away from unison singing because it's, I don't know, it might seem boring, I guess, but this is a beautiful tune that he's created, and it's accompanied by, we're kind of throwing all of our instruments that we're using in the concert into this performance. So we'll be using organ, piano, harp, handbells. We'll be using handbells as well as guitar, and maybe even a auto harp. Sorry, it took me a while to get that name. So they're all accompanying the single voice line that happens. And Daniel Pinkham is just a wonderful presence to have on a concert, and this is going to be a real fun thing to hear.
It's really kind of an interesting tune. I mean, the notation in the score is a little different, and with just having the piano accompaniment that we've been having during rehearsals, the voice part of it really seems very intricate and all that, even though it is unison. Mm-hmm. It has just a beautiful sound to it without adding all the other instruments into it. That's really going to make it quite something.
Yes, yeah, it's really amazing how he's crafted this melody. It's a beautiful melody. It's not the easiest one to learn. It's not particularly easy. It has a couple little twists and turns that take a little bit of attention. But you're right. It's very intricate, and on top of the four chords that will accompany and repeat throughout the piece, it just makes this beautiful blend.
And now, Evergreen by Daniel Pinkham.
The next piece has a little bit more involved with it, but I assume a lot of you, especially the younger crowd, knows a song called Four Chords. Maybe? Maybe not. Well, there are a lot of pop songs that are created with four chords. And so now that was composed, that song came about far after Daniel Pinkham composed this piece. But he took four chords and basically just kept them going. So you're going to see, on the page, you see just four chords and then they disappear. And they just say, just keep doing those four chords over and over and over, as far as the accompaniment is concerned. And the choir sings a unison line the entire time. No four parts, it's just all singing the same line. And it's just an amazing marriage of these two simple ideas. Four chords, one melody, and it just creates this beautiful tapestry. We hope you enjoy.
The next piece in the program is a kind of a mashup of an old text with a new song. It's called Lo How a Rose, the Rose, and this takes that old Lo How a Rose Ere Blooming text and tune and mixes it in with Bette Midler's The Rose.
Yes, Craig Hella Johnson is the arranger of this piece, or the adapter, I guess you could say. And he's very good at taking old ideas, and not necessarily bad ideas, but just older styles of things and putting them in with a newer style of music and putting them together and making sense of it. So he's taken this beautiful old chant, old melody of Lo How a Rose Ere Blooming, and put it together with The Rose that most of us, at least of a certain age, remember from our childhood or teenage years. And I loved this tune as a kid, and loved the performance. And so when I saw this on the shelf one time when I was earlier in my career, I was floored by how amazing it is. And Craig Hella Johnson is a real innovator these days in the choral world. He has a group called Conspirare, which is based in Houston, and they're doing just some amazing work and creating new pieces of music that are really helping broaden the audience of choral music and attracting younger listeners. And this is one of the ways he's doing it. We're going to be joined in our performance by a group of senior sopranos and altos from Oliver Ames High School, which is where I taught last year. They're going to be singing the melody of The Rose while Jubilate sings the tune of Lo How a Rose Ere Blooming.
And now, Lo How a Rose, the Rose, arranged by Craig Hella Johnson. The final piece in the program is The Ceremony of Carols by Benjamin Britten. And this piece, he took a lot of old texts going back into Middle English. And were they set to the original tunes that they used then, or did he do some recomposing on here?
Well, he did a little bit. The entrance of the piece is a chant, the Hodie Christus natus est, which is a chant that pre-existed his composition, obviously. He had this book on a voyage back to England from his tour of the United States, which he took with Peter Pears, and they did a lot of concerts around the country. When they were on their way back, he had this book of texts, and he was reading them, and he was commissioned to write a harp concerto, and that actually fell through. So he had already studied a little bit about the harp, and he was trying to figure out a way that he could use his newfound knowledge of the instrument, and he had these texts and decided to write this collection of carols that he knew. And so some of them are arranged, like Lohauer Rose has a little bit of semblance of a tune from long ago. But he really took care in blending the sound of the voices with the harp. The harp is beautifully composed. There is a movement in the piece where the harp plays their own solo, and it's absolutely inspired. We're really fortunate to have Emily Halpern Lewis joining us on harp. She is one of the more working harpists in the area, and we're really thrilled to have her. And I got her name from many people in the area, so she's very well respected, and we're just thrilled to have her. There are choruses as well as some solos and duets, so it really breaks up the action here and there. The real genius of this is how Britten takes these tunes, and a really simple tune, but doesn't try to put too much to it. He breaks the tunes up, passes them around the sections, and sticks with the original thematic material rather than being ultra adventurous and making things overly complicated. It's just a beautiful blending of text and color, and I know the audience is really going to enjoy it.
And now, The Ceremony of Carols by Benjamin Britten. The next piece was written by a man who people know for one musical that he wrote for the Broadway stage many years ago, Meredith Willson, and don't realize he wrote this one too. It's called It's Beginning to Look a Lot Like Christmas. And I can remember learning this back in my childhood days, a long, long time ago, and it's always stuck with me.
Yes, that's how I learned it as well. When I was a kid, my mom, I came from a musical family, and my mom would take myself and my brother, and we would also join my aunt and her son, Kevin, and we would go and perform at some places around town, and this was one of the songs. And I remember drawing a picture of certain Christmas gifts that I remember getting or was interested in getting, and we would take them. I would take it around, and when I had to sing something, I would hold up the picture so that the audience could see it, and of course it created a wonderful moment seeing this child holding up this picture of a present that they wanted. The tune is really a lot of fun, and it's very wordy and pattery with the choir, and they're having a lot of fun putting it together.
Al Murray, I want to thank you so much for coming into the studio to help us do this program notes section of the concert, and we'll look forward to seeing you again in the spring.
Yes, it was my pleasure talking with you, Paul, and I look forward to the spring.
And now, It's Beginning to Look a Lot Like Christmas by Meredith Willson.
We actually have one more little ditty, just one more.